The day Aurelia Brennan's $2.3 billion empire almost collapsed, it started with two words signed by tiny hands in a corner no one was watching. Nobody cares. The Fairmont Hotel's grand ballroom in San Francisco glittered like a jewelry box that night. 300 guests in evening wear, champagne fountains cascading golden bubbles, a 12-piece orchestra playing something elegant and forgettable. The annual Brennan Technologies Gala, where Silicon Valley's elite gathered to celebrate innovation disruption and the relentless forward march of progress. And in the corner, pressed against cream-colored wallpaper, beneath an enormous floral arrangement that cost more than most people's monthly rent, two 6-year-old girls sat on the floor present but unseen. Matching red Dior dresses, identical ginger curls pulled into elaborate braids, small hands moving through signs that no one in that room of 300 could read. Lyric and Melody Brennan, profoundly deaf, completely forgotten. Children rushed past them chasing balloons. Adults stepped around them like decorative furniture. A waiter nearly tripped over Melody's outstretched leg, muttered something they couldn't hear, and kept moving. The girls didn't flinch. They'd learned not to expect acknowledgement. Lyric's hands moved slowly. "Do you think Mom will come talk to us?" Melody's response was even slower, weighted with a resignation no child should carry. "She won't. She never does." On the stage at the front of the ballroom, their mother commanded every eye in the room. Aurelia Catherine Brennan, 34 years old, stood behind a podium bearing her company's logo with the confidence of someone who'd earned her position through brilliance and blood. Designer black suit tailored to perfection. Dark hair swept into a flawless updo. The kind of presence that made people lean forward when she spoke. At Brennan Technologies, her voice carried across the ballroom without effort. "We believe in 3 core values: innovation that breaks boundaries, connection that transcends distance, and accessibility that ensures no one gets left behind." The irony was exquisite. Behind her, a massive screen displayed images of her company's products, cutting-edge software, communication platforms, tools designed to bring people together across continents and languages. The audience applauded at precisely the right moments. They always did. Aurelia never glanced toward the corner where her daughter sat. She couldn't. If she looked at them, she'd see the distance she'd created. The 18 months since their father's death that she'd spent building walls instead of bridges. The communication gap that terrified her more than any hostile takeover or failed product launch. Instead, she smiled, gestured to the screen, talked about quarterly earnings and upcoming innovations, and the IPO scheduled for 6 weeks from now that would change everything. $500 million. That's what the initial public offering would bring. Enough to secure her daughter's futures. Enough to prove that Julian's death hadn't destroyed everything he'd built. Enough to justify the 90-hour work weeks and the guilt that sat in her chest like a stone. As they walked toward the elevator after the speech, Melody stumbled slightly. Aurelia caught her arm. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Melody nodded, signing. "Just tired. Happens sometimes." Aurelia made a mental note to check with the neurologist. The doctors had warned about post-traumatic epilepsy after the accident. Small episodes that might escalate without proper monitoring. Another thing she'd let slip through the cracks. The speech ended to thunderous applause. Aurelia descended from the stage into a sea of congratulations and networking opportunities. She moved through them gracefully, already planning her next meeting, her next presentation, her next milestone. She didn't see the janitor pushing a cleaning cart along the perimeter of the ballroom, but he saw her daughters. Thaddeus Morrison, 35 years old, looked exactly like what he was supposed to be. Navy blue uniform with Morrison stitched above the pocket. Baseball cap pulled low. The kind of overlook that service workers become in rooms full of wealth. He'd perfected the art of not being noticed over the past 3 years. His shift had started at 6 that evening. Before this, he'd spent 8 hours pouring concrete at a construction site in Oakland. His back ached. His hands were raw. He'd managed 3 hours of sleep the night before, wedged between his day job and picking up his son from Mrs. Chen's apartment. Thad emptied trash bins with mechanical precision. Don't think, don't feel, just move. Get through the shift. Pick up Jasper. Go home. Repeat tomorrow. Then he saw the girls. Something long buried stirred inside him. They sat so still, too still for children their age. Their small faces tracked the movement of the party with expressions that made Thad's throat tight. Not sadness exactly. Worse than sadness. Acceptance. The kind of resignation that comes from repeatedly learning you don't matter. He noticed the hearing aids, small devices in their ears nearly hidden by their curls. Understanding crashed over him like cold water. They were deaf. Every instinct screamed at him to keep moving. Don't get involved. Don't use your hands. Don't remember what it felt like when your hands were fluent in a language you've spent 3 years trying to forget. Don't remember Celeste. His wife's face flashed through his mind. 29 years old in their Brooklyn apartment, hands flying through a story about her day at the Deaf Advocacy Center where she worked. Her silent laugh. The way she'd sign "I love you" every night before sleep, her fingers forming the shapes that meant everything. The way those same hands had gone still on a Tuesday afternoon when her brain simply stopped working. Aneurysm, the doctor said. Nothing anyone could have done. She was there and then she wasn't, and Thad's entire world had collapsed into a single moment of impossible silence. He'd stopped signing that day, stopped teaching, stopped being who he was. But now watching these two small girls pressed against the wall overlooked, despite being in the center of everything, Thad heard his wife's voice in his memory. Not words. She'd never spoken. But he could almost see her hands forming the signs she would have made if she were here. Go to them. His feet moved before his brain caught up. Cart abandoned. Rules forgotten. Years of careful avoidance crumbling. Thad crossed the ballroom floor. Guests stared. A janitor approaching the CEO's daughter's security started to move. Thad sat down on the floor beside the girls. Both twins' startled eyes going wide. An adult was acknowledging them, sitting with them, choosing to be in their space. Thad's fingers moved stiffly, shapes he hadn't formed in 3 years. But muscle memory was a powerful thing. His hands began to remember what his mind had tried to forget. Hello, my name is Thaddeus. What are your names? Lyric and Melody's mouths dropped open. They looked at each other, confirming this was really happening. Slowly, tentatively, Lyric's small hands moved. I'm Lyric. This is Melody. Those are beautiful names. Thad signed, feeling something in his chest that had been frozen for 3 years begin to thaw. Why are you sitting here all alone? Melody's hands moved with heartbreaking matter-of-factness. Nobody ever talks to us. They look away. They always look away. The words hit Thad like a physical blow. These children at 6 years old had already internalized being unseen. Not tonight, Thad signed, his hands more confident now. Tonight I see you. And I have an important question. Both girls leaned forward, curious. Do you know why mountains never get cold? They shook their heads. Because they wear snow caps. It was a terrible joke. The kind Thad used to tell his ASL students to break tension. But Melody's serious face cracked into the smallest smile. Lyric's eyes lit up like someone had flipped a switch inside her. That's silly, Lyric signed. But she was grinning. You think that's silly? Watch this. Thad launched into the most embarrassing seated dance moves he could manage. Exaggerated shoulder shimmies, ridiculous hand waves. A sitting version of the Running Man that would have mortified his 8-year-old son if Jasper had been there to see it. The twins stared for one shocked moment. Then they laughed. Real laughter. The kind that shakes your whole body. Melody doubled over. Lyric's hands flew to her mouth. They made sounds, their voices rusty from disuse, but present, echoing across the ballroom with pure, unfiltered joy. The entire gala stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. 300 people suddenly focused on one corner of the room where an exhausted janitor had 2 little girls in red dresses bent over in laughter. The orchestra faltered. Glasses paused halfway to lips. And across the ballroom, threading through a cluster of investors, Aurelia Brennan heard something that made her heart stop. Her daughters. Laughing. She hadn't heard them really laugh since before the accident. Since before Julian's funeral. Since before the hearing loss and the trauma and the 18 months of grief that had swallowed all of them whole. Aurelia turned, pushed through the crowd, her heart hammering, and she saw him, a janitor, signing fluently with her daughters. His expressions animated and warm. his hands moving through complex signs with the kind of ease that only came from years of practice. Her daughters' faces were radiant, alive, present in a way Aurelia hadn't seen in so long she'd almost forgotten what their joy looked like. Shame burned through her chest like acid. This stranger was doing what she should be doing, what she'd failed to do despite all the tutors and therapists and expensive interventions. He was talking to them, in their language, treating them like they mattered. Aurelia's heels clicked against the polished floor as she approached, her face carefully composed even as her emotions churned. Lyric and Melody's laughter faded when they saw her coming. They sat up straighter, their joy dimming like someone had turned down their light. That small reaction told Aurelia everything she needed to know about the distance she'd created. The janitor stood and Aurelia noticed things. The way he carried himself, the confidence in his posture despite the uniform, the intelligence in his eyes. "Those are my daughters." Her voice came out harder than she intended. "Yes, ma'am." He met her gaze directly. No deference, no apology. "They're wonderful children. They just needed someone to talk to them." The words landed like a slap. Heat flooded Aurelia's face, but years of venture capital pitches had taught her to control her reactions. "I appreciate your interaction with them, but I can take it from here." "Of course," he nodded, started to turn away. Then Lyric's small hands moved, signs that Aurelia had learned enough to recognize over 18 months of sporadic lessons and guilty attempts at communication. "Mommy, why doesn't this man work for you? He understands us." The question hung in the air. Simple, devastating. Aurelia looked at the janitor again. Really looked. "Who are you?" "Nobody important, ma'am. Just someone who speaks sign language." "That's not casual signing. You're fluent. Professional level." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or memory. "I used to teach ASL a long time ago." "Used to. It's complicated." Aurelia's analytical mind kicked into gear. Former ASL teacher working as a janitor. There was a story there. Probably a painful one. She recognized the signs. She'd been running from her own pain for 18 months. Before she could respond, Melody signed something that made Lyric nod emphatically. Aurelia caught only pieces. Nice. Safe. Made us laugh. "What's your name?" Aurelia asked. "Thaddeus Morrison." "I'm Aurelia Brennan. I know who you are, ma'am. It's your company." Of course he knew. Everyone there knew. She was famous in Silicon Valley. Forbes had done 2 cover stories. She'd built Brennan Technologies from a garage startup to a unicorn company worth billions. But standing there looking at her daughters' faces, still lit with residual joy from this stranger's attention, Aurelia realized that none of that mattered. All her success meant nothing if she couldn't connect with her own children. "Mr. Morrison," she said slowly, an idea forming, "I'd like to talk to you. After the event. Please." He hesitated. Every line of his body said he wanted to refuse. "Please," Aurelia repeated. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Finally he nodded. "The gala ends at 7. I'll be in the employee break room." He walked away and Aurelia watched him go, her mind already spinning. Beside her, Melody tugged on her dress. When Aurelia looked down, her daughter signed slowly, carefully, making sure her mother could understand. "He made us feel real." Aurelia's vision blurred. She knelt down, pulling both girls into a hug they didn't quite return. They were still, polite, but not present. She taught them to expect distance from her. The realization nearly destroyed her. 3 hours later, Aurelia found Thaddeus Morrison in a small break room tucked behind the hotel kitchens. He'd changed from his janitor uniform into worn jeans and a faded Columbia University sweatshirt. He was drinking coffee from a paper cup, looking exhausted. "Thank you for staying," Aurelia said from the doorway. He stood. "You wanted to talk." "I want to hire you." His eyebrows rose. "Ma'am, I already work for the contracted cleaning company. I don't need not to clean, to teach me sign language properly, to teach me how to communicate with my daughters the way you did tonight." Thad set down his coffee. "Ms. Brennan, my husband died 18 months ago, the same car accident that took my daughter's hearing." Something in his expression shifted. Recognition. Shared understanding. I'm sorry. So am I. For a lot of things. Aurelia moved into the room. I saw you with Lyric and Melody. The way you signed. That's not self-taught. You said you were a teacher. I was. I'm not anymore. Why not? His jaw tightened. That's the complicated part. I'll pay you whatever you want. Name your price. I don't want your money. The refusal surprised her. Everyone wanted something from Aurelia Brennan. Money, access, opportunities. This janitor was turning down what could be a lucrative side job. Then what do you want? Thad looked at her for a long moment. I want to go home to my son. I want to sleep. I want to not think about sign language because every gesture reminds me of my wife, who died 3 years ago and left me with a grief I don't know how to carry. The raw honesty stopped Aurelia cold. Your wife was deaf, she said quietly, not a question. From birth. We met when she came to a workshop I was teaching. We got married, had a son, built a life entirely around sign language. His hands clenched. And then she died. Brain aneurysm. No warning. One moment she was there, the next she wasn't. And every time I've signed since then, all I can see is her hands going still. Aurelia understood. She recognized that particular flavor of grief, the kind that made you avoid everything connected to your loss because remembering hurt too much. I haven't been able to sign with my daughters, she admitted. I hired tutors, I took classes, but I can't be present with them because being present means acknowledging what we lost. Acknowledging that Julian is gone, and they're different now, and I failed to protect them. You didn't fail them. The accident, I failed them after. I threw myself into work. 90-hour weeks, building the company, preparing for the IPO, telling myself I was securing their future when really I was just running from their present. Thad nodded slowly. He understood running. But tonight, Aurelia continued, I watched you sit down with them. I saw them light up. I heard them laugh. And I realized that I've been so busy surviving that I forgot to live. She met his eyes. I don't want to pay you. I want to beg you. Teach me. Not because you owe me anything, but because those 3 kids, your son, my daughters, they deserve better than parents who are too scared to be present. Thad closed his eyes. She could see the war happening behind his face, the desire to say no, to protect himself, to keep running. Then he opened his eyes. I have one son, Jasper. He's 8. My neighbor watches him while I work, but she can't keep doing that forever. If I'm going to teach you, I need reasonable hours. I need to be home for him. Done. What else? I want weekends, real weekends, with Jasper. No work, no lessons, just time with my kid. Agreed. And you have to promise me something. His voice went hard. You show up for every lesson, no assistance, no excuses. If you're serious about learning to connect with your daughters, then you have to be present, actually present, not just physically there while your mind is on quarterly reports. Aurelia felt the challenge in his words, the doubt. He didn't believe she could do it. I promise, she said. They stared at each other across the small break room. 2 people hollowed out by grief standing at the edge of something that might be healing or might be another kind of wound. When do we start? Aurelia asked. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Bring Lyric and Melody. This isn't just about you learning signs. It's about rebuilding what's broken between the 3 of you. Aurelia nodded, tears threatening. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be hard. For both of us. He left and Aurelia stood alone in the break room, wondering what she'd just set in motion. Outside, the San Francisco night sparkled with possibility and danger in equal measure. The conference room on the 47th floor of Brennan Technologies had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. At 6 p.m., golden hour light painted everything in shades of amber and hope. Aurelia arrived 10 minutes early, nervous in a way she hadn't been since her first pitch to venture capitalists a decade ago. Thaddeus arrived exactly on time with 3 children in tow. Lyric and Melody spotted their mother and hesitated. They weren't used to seeing her outside of their house, weren't used to having her undivided attention. The 3rd child, a boy with Thad's dark hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward confidently. His hands moved through signs as naturally as breathing. Hello, I'm Jasper. Nice to meet you. Aurelia understood perhaps half of it, but she caught the greeting, managed to sign back something that probably meant, "Nice to meet you too," but might have meant turtle elephant. Jasper giggled, corrected her hand position gently, and just like that, the lesson began. The first 2 weeks were humbling. Aurelia Brennan, who'd graduated MIT with honors, who'd built a $1 billion company, who'd negotiated with the toughest venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, struggled with basic ASL like a child learning to read. Her hands felt clumsy. The shapes didn't come naturally. She mixed up similar signs, accidentally telling her daughters, "I love cheese," when she meant, "I love you." Melody giggled so hard she nearly fell off her chair. But Aurelia kept showing up. 6 p.m. every evening. 2 hours, no phone, no laptop, no assistants interrupting with urgent matters. Just her Thad and 3 children, teaching her a language she should have learned 18 months ago. Thad was patient but firm. Sign language isn't just hand gestures, he explained during their third lesson. It's facial expressions, body language, emotion. You're not just communicating words, you're communicating presence. "I don't know how to be present," Aurelia admitted. "I've spent so long running from feelings that I don't remember how to sit with them." Then that's what we're really learning here. Not just signs, presence itself. The lessons became more than language instruction. They became therapy. Thad would ask questions that made Aurelia confront things she'd been avoiding. Meanwhile, the 3 children formed their own universe. Jasper, Lyric, and Melody created a hybrid language mixing ASL with English and their own invented signs. They did handstands, played card games, told jokes that made no sense to adults, but had them in stitches. One evening during week 3, while Aurelia practiced fingerspelling with Thad, Melody signed something to Lyric. Aurelia caught only part of it, but what she understood made her chest tighten. "Mom is trying. Maybe she won't leave us anymore." "I never left," Aurelia said aloud, forgetting to sign. Melody looked at her mother, signed slowly, carefully, making sure Aurelia would understand every word. "Your body was here sometimes, but you were never with us." The truth of it hit like a fist. Aurelia had been physically present for bedtimes and dinners and school pickups, but mentally, emotionally, she'd been gone, buried in work, hidden behind spreadsheets and strategic plans. "I'm sorry," Aurelia signed the shapes, coming more naturally now. "I didn't know how to be with you. Your loss reminded me of mine, and I couldn't face it." Lyric crossed the room, climbed into her mother's lap in a way she hadn't since she was 4 years old. "It's okay," she signed against Aurelia's chest. "You're here now. That's what matters." Aurelia held her daughter and cried. Real tears, not the careful, private tears she allowed herself at night, but messy, honest sobs. Thad shepherded Jasper and Melody out of the room, giving them privacy. Mother and daughter sat together as the sun set over the bay, learning what presence actually meant. During week 4, something shifted. Thad arrived at the lesson to find Aurelia already in the conference room practicing signs with a YouTube video. She didn't hear him enter. He watched her struggle through a complex phrase, "mess up, start over." Repeat it 5 times until her hands moved smoothly. She looked up, startled. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to see you practicing on your own time." He signed it instead of speaking. Why? Aurelia's hands moved slowly. "Because I'm tired of not understanding my daughters. Because I'm tired of letting fear win. Because you showed me it's possible to be brave." Something passed between them. Recognition, attraction, danger. Thad stepped back. "We should start the lesson." "Yes, of course." But the air in the room had changed, and they both knew it. But not everyone was happy about Aurelia's new focus. Victor Calhoun, Chief Financial Officer of Brennan Technologies, stood in his office on the 45th floor, staring at reports that troubled him. The CEO was leaving at 6 p.m. sharp every evening, declining dinner meetings, missing networking events. Her attention was divided, and the IPO was 5 weeks away. Victor had worked in tech finance for 20 years. He'd seen this before. Personal issues derailing major business moves. Leaders losing focus at critical moments. He'd also seen opportunity. Victor made phone calls, asked questions, discovered that the janitor from the gala had been promoted to an executive position. Director of Accessibility and Communication. $180,000 plus stock options. He dug deeper. found bankruptcy records, medical debt, a life that had collapsed 3 years ago. Victor added notes to his file. He was building a case. The board meeting that week was tense. 9 people around a glass table reviewing Q3 performance and IPO preparations. Revenue is strong, Victor said, pulling up slides. But we need Aurelia's full attention on investor relations. Several hedge funds have expressed concern about leadership focus. Aurelia kept her expression neutral. I'm available for all scheduled investor meetings. But you're leaving at 6 every evening. You've declined 3 dinner events with major investors. I've rescheduled those meetings for lunch hours. The investors understand. Do they? Victor leaned forward. Because what I'm hearing is that they're wondering if you're fully committed, if personal matters are affecting your judgment. The threat was subtle but present. Aurelia felt the rest of the board's eyes on her. Dr. Margaret Chen, co-founder, and the only other woman on the board, spoke up. Aurelia's commitment has never been in question. She built this company from nothing. And she's also a widow with young children, Victor said smoothly. No one faults her for that, but timing is everything. We can't afford distractions 6 weeks before the biggest financial event in our company's history. The meeting ended. Aurelia returned to her office, trembling with anger and uncertainty. That night at 11 p.m., Aurelia's phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Brennan, this is Rebecca from Children's Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about your daughter's living situation. Aurelia's blood went cold. What kind of report? Allegations of neglect, specifically failure to provide adequate communication support for deaf children, and concerns about an unvetted male having unsupervised access to your children. Victor, this was Victor's doing. I can assure you, we'll need to schedule a home visit within 48 hours. It's standard procedure. The line went dead. Aurelia sat in her dark office staring at her phone. Victor wasn't just attacking her professionally, he was going after her children. She called Thad. We have a problem. 2 days later, a tired caseworker named Rebecca, with kind eyes, spent 2 hours at Aurelia's penthouse. She watched Lyric and Melody interact with their mother, observed them, signing freely, laughing comfortable. She interviewed Thad separately, checked his background, spoke with Jasper. This was a malicious report, Rebecca concluded. Your daughters are thriving. They're more communicative than many hearing children I see. And Mr. Morrison's presence is clearly beneficial. His background check is spotless, former UN interpreter, master's degree in deaf studies. Whoever filed this report was trying to cause trouble. After she left, Aurelia called her lawyer. I want to know who filed that report. It was anonymous, but find out. I want evidence. It took 3 days. The call had been made from Victor Calhoun's cell phone. Traced through carrier records, irrefutable. Aurelia added it to a growing file. She would use it when the time came. Victor had made this personal. He was about to learn that was a mistake. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Chen called Thad at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. I fell, sprained my ankle badly. I can't watch Jasper for at least a week. Panic flooded through Thad. He couldn't miss work, couldn't afford to. He called Aurelia apologetic. I have to cancel tonight. I'm so sorry. Childcare emergency. Bring him, Aurelia said immediately. Bring Jasper to the office. The kids can be together. We'll work it out. I can't impose Thaddeus. Bring your son. It's practical, and I want him here. So that evening, Jasper walked through the glass doors of Brennan Technologies headquarters for the first time. His eyes went huge. Dad, this place is like a spaceship. The lobby was modern Silicon Valley elegance. Exposed brick, industrial chic, a living wall of plants 3 stories high. When they reached the conference room, Lyric and Melody were already there. The twins' faces lit up when they saw Jasper. The 3 children fell into immediate comfortable companionship. Homework spread across the conference table. Jasper helping Melody with math. Lyric showing Jasper a drawing she'd made. Aurelia and Thad watched something unspoken passing between them. They're good together, Aurelia observed. Jasper hasn't had friends since Celeste died, Thad said quietly. We moved so much, changed schools. He got quiet, withdrawn. Lyric and Melody don't have friends either. Other kids don't know how to talk to them. They looked at each other. 2 single parents, Two sets of children healing together. Thank you, Thad said, for this, for all of it. Thank you for giving me my daughters back. Their hands were resting on the table, inches apart. Neither moved to close the distance, but neither moved away. The moment broke when Victor Calhoun walked past the conference room. He stopped, stared through the glass walls, saw Aurelia, saw the former janitor he'd been investigating, saw them sitting close, three children playing nearby, the whole scene, looking far too comfortable, too familiar. Victor's eyes narrowed. He pulled out his phone, took photos through the glass, started typing notes. Inside the conference room, unaware they were being watched, five people who'd been broken by loss were slowly becoming something that might be whole. But outside in the corridors of corporate power wheels were already turning. The IPO was 3 weeks away. $500 million hung in the balance. And Victor Calhoun had just found his weapon. The emergency board meeting was called for 8 a.m. on a Thursday, 3 weeks before the IPO. Aurelia knew something was wrong the moment she saw Victor's expression. Triumphant, predatory. The conference room felt colder than usual, despite the morning sun streaming through windows. 9 board members, various expressions ranging from curious to concerned to carefully neutral. Dr. Margaret Chen caught Aurelia's eye. Signed discreetly, "Be ready." Victor stood pulling up a presentation. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I've discovered information that requires immediate board attention regarding our CEO's judgment in the upcoming IPO. Aurelia's stomach dropped. 3 weeks ago, Victor continued, Ms. Brennan hired someone from our janitorial staff, promoted him to a newly created executive position, Director of Accessibility and Communication, annual salary of $180,000 plus stock options. Murmurs around the table. I want to be clear, Victor said smoothly. I'm not questioning Ms. Brennan's authority to make hiring decisions. However, given the timing and the unusual circumstances, I felt the board should know certain facts. He clicked to the next slide. Public records. Court documents. Thaddeus Morrison, the man in question, filed for bankruptcy 3 year ago. Medical debt exceeding $340,000. His financial instability could pose a risk during SEC review of our IPO application. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Additionally, Victor continued pulling up photos taken through the conference room glass. Ms. Brennan has been spending significant time with Mr. Morrison, 2 hours daily, often with their children present. While I'm sure there's a perfectly innocent explanation, the optics are concerning. The implication was clear. Inappropriate relationship, poor judgment, CEO distracted by personal matters at a critical time. Aurelia felt anger rising, but years of investor pitches had taught her control. She kept her face calm. Are you finished? She asked coolly. Just one more thing. Victor's smile was sharp. I've been in contact with several major investors. They've expressed concern about leadership focus. Given everything I've just presented, I believe we need to seriously consider whether a temporary change in leadership might be prudent until after the IPO. There it was, the real move. Victor wasn't questioning her hiring decision. He was questioning her entire position. I move for a vote of no confidence, Victor said. Effective immediately with board member Richards, assuming interim CEO duties through the IPO. Silence crashed through the room. This was a coup. Carefully orchestrated, perfectly timed. Before anyone could speak, Dr. Margaret Chen stood. Victor, you've made some interesting points. Now let me share some facts you've omitted. She pulled up her own presentation on the screen. 6 months ago, you began meeting secretly with an investor group led by Damian Pierce, the same Damian Pierce who tried and failed to acquire Brennan Technologies 2 years ago. Emails appeared on screen, meeting locations, financial projections. Your plan is transparent. Remove Aurelia before the IPO, install a friendly interim CEO, tank the stock price through manufactured crisis, then your investor group swoops in to buy the company at a fraction of its value. Victor's face went white. You're not trying to protect this company, Maggie continued. You're trying to steal it. And there's one more thing. She clicked to the next slide. This is a record of a call made to Child Protective Services 3 weeks ago, an anonymous tip about Ms. Brennan's daughters. The call was traced to your phone, Victor. You weaponize CPS against a widow and her deaf children to advance your corporate agenda. The board erupted. Accusations flew. Victor tried to defend himself, but the evidence was damning. In the chaos, Aurelia felt a strange calm settle over her. This was a business problem. She knew how to solve business problems. I call for a vote on Victor's motion of no confidence, she said clearly. The room quieted. All in favor of removing me as CEO indicate now. Victor's hand went up. Two other board members, both part of his group, followed. 3 votes. All opposed. 6 hands, including Maggie's. The motion failed decisively. Victor, you're fired, Aurelia said. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Your stock options are forfeit under the breach of fiduciary duty clause, and I'm referring the CPS matter to law enforcement. You can't, I can, and I am. Board, do we have consensus? 8 hands rose. Only Victor's remained down. He left the room escorted by security, his face mottled with rage and disbelief. When the door closed, Aurelia let herself breathe. But she knew this wasn't over. The investors he contacted, she said to Maggie, they still have concerns, legitimate ones. I need to address them directly. How? Aurelia thought about Thad, about what he'd taught her over the past 7 weeks, about presence, about communication, about what really mattered. I'm going to show them what I've been working on. 2 days later, Aurelia stood before a conference room full of major investors, 20 people who collectively controlled hundreds of millions of dollars. She'd prepared a presentation, traditional slides about growth projections, market analysis, competitive advantages. She used exactly none of it. Instead, she began in American Sign Language. My name is Aurelia Brennan. I'm the CEO of Brennan Technologies, and I'm also a mother who failed her daughters for 18 months because I was too afraid to learn their language. Thad stood to the side, interpreting aloud while Aurelia signed. The investors looked confused. This wasn't a typical pitch. When my husband died, I threw myself into work. I told myself I was building security for my children, but really I was running from grief. I was so focused on the future that I couldn't be present in the now. She continued, signing her hands, confident now. Then a janitor sat down with my daughters at a gala. He did something I couldn't do. He saw them. He talked to them. He made them feel like they mattered. And I realized that if I couldn't communicate with my own children, how could I claim my company was about connection? Aurelia gestured to the screen behind her. New slides appeared. Not financial projections, market research. 48 million Americans are deaf or hard of hearing. That's a $35 billion market that most tech companies ignore. Not because it's not profitable, but because they don't see those people. She clicked to the next slide. Prototypes of Brennan Technologies' new products, AI-powered real-time ASL translation, accessible interfaces designed by deaf consultants. My company was supposed to connect people, but we were only connecting people who communicated like us. More slides, letters of intent from Microsoft, Apple, Google, all wanting to partner on the accessibility initiative. Over the past 7 weeks, while some people question my focus, I've been working on something bigger than one IPO. I've been learning that true innovation isn't just about the next product. It's about seeing the people no one else sees. She lowered her hands, spoke aloud now. Thaddeus Morrison didn't just teach me sign language. He showed me what leadership actually means. Presence, communication, the willingness to be vulnerable and admit when you're wrong. Those aren't distractions from business. They're the foundation of sustainable business. Aurelia pulled up financial projections. Real ones this time. The accessibility market is massive and underserved. We're not pursuing it for charity. We're pursuing it because it's smart. Because serving 48 million Americans creates value for shareholders while doing genuine good. The room was silent. Then the conference room door opened. Lyric, Melody, and Jasper walked in, followed by Thad, looking slightly panicked. The children had clearly escaped their supervision downstairs. The investors stiffened. This was highly irregular. Lyric walked directly to the front of the room, signed to Aurelia, who interpreted aloud. Mom, we made something for you. Melody handed Aurelia a tablet. On screen, a presentation, made by 3 children. Title slide, Why Our Parents Are Good at Their Jobs, by Jasper Morrison, Lyric Brennan, and Melody Brennan. Aurelia's throat tightened. Jasper stepped forward signing while speaking aloud. My dad used to be the best interpreter at the United Nations. He helped world leaders understand each other. Then my mom died and he got scared of his own hands. He thought he couldn't do it anymore. Melody continued signing with Thad interpreting. Our mom built a company worth billions, but she got scared of us because we reminded her that bad things happen. She thought she couldn't be with us and be strong too. Lyric finished. But they're not scared anymore. They learned that being good at their jobs means being good at life too. You can't separate them. The three children stood together, signed simultaneously. They're not perfect, but they show up. That's what matters. Every investor in that room was either in tears or fighting them. Dr. Elizabeth Huang from Summit Ventures cleared her throat. I think we've seen enough. Summit Ventures is fully committed to the IPO. In fact, we'd like to increase our position by 20%. Other investors nodded, murmured agreement. The meeting ended with stronger commitments than before the crisis. After everyone left, Aurelia pulled all three children into a hug. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. We were worried they didn't understand, Jasper said. You made them understand perfectly. That evening, after the children were asleep, Thad and Aurelia sat on his tiny balcony, overlooking an ordinary street in Oakland. I never properly thanked you, Aurelia said. For what? For sitting down with my daughters that night, for agreeing to teach me, for being patient with me. I wasn't patient. I was terrified. Of what? Of remembering what it felt like to use my hands again, of letting someone see me vulnerable, of caring about something enough that losing it would hurt. Aurelia understood. Are you still terrified? Yes, but in a different way now. They sat in silence, comfortable with each other. The IPO is in 2 days, Aurelia said. I know. After that, things will be different. Publicly traded company, more scrutiny, more pressure. Can you handle it? I think so. If I have the right people around me. She looked at him. He looked back. Thaddeus Morrison, will you be my VP of Accessibility? Real title, real authority. Help me build something that actually matters. On one condition. What's that? You keep showing up. For your daughters, for yourself. No matter how busy things get. Deal. They shook hands, but the touch lingered. Something more than professional. More than friendship. Not yet, but maybe someday. 6 months after the IPO closed, Brennan Technologies stock had risen 34%. The accessibility division had signed partnerships with 3 major tech companies and hired 45 deaf employees. Forbes ran a cover story, how Aurelia Brennan built a billion-dollar company by learning to listen. But the real story wasn't in magazines. It was in a small house in Marin County, purchased together by 2 single parents who decided to pool resources and create a real home for their combined family. It was in Lyric and Melody thriving at a new school where half the students were learning ASL as a second language. It was in Jasper running an after-school program teaching basic signs to hearing kids. It was in Aurelia leaving work at 6 p.m. 3 days a week, not because she had to, because she wanted to. It was in Thad's hands, no longer afraid to form the shapes that had once meant everything. 18 months after that first gala, the night everything changed, Aurelia and Thad stood in San Francisco City Hall. Small ceremony, Dr. Maggie officiating in one of her last lucid days, just family and close friends. The vows were entirely in sign language. You taught me that strength isn't controlling everything, Aurelia signed. It's connecting with what matters. You taught me that honoring the past means building a future, Thad signed back. Not running from it. They signed together. Family isn't who you start with. It's who you choose. 3 children stood witness. Jasper walked Aurelia down the short aisle. Lyric and Melody carried flowers. When the officiant pronounced them married, all 5 of them signed simultaneously, I love you. The reception was at the Fairmont Hotel, same ballroom where it all began. But this time, no one was overlooked. Aurelia looked around at the people they'd gathered. Deaf colleagues from Thad's UN days, employees from Brennan Technologies' Accessibility Division, families they'd helped through new programs and initiatives. Mrs. Chen danced with the children, teaching them old Italian folk steps while calling out the moves in sign language, making everyone laugh at the joyful chaos. We did something good, Aurelia said to Thad. We did something real, he corrected. That night after the party ended and the children fell asleep in sleeping bags in their new home's living room, Aurelia and Thad sat together on their porch. Do you think they're proud of us? Thad asked quietly. Celeste and Julian, wherever they are. I think they knew we'd find our way, eventually, through sign language, through learning to be present. Inside, three children dreamed of futures where difference wasn't something to hide, where language had no barriers, where families could be built from broken pieces and become stronger at the seams. Aurelia Brennan had built a $2.3 billion empire, but her real success was measured in different currency, in daughters who felt seen, in a son who had siblings, in a partner who'd learned that healing wasn't betraying the past, it was honoring it by living fully, in hands that had been silent, learning to speak again. The empire would continue. The company would grow. There would be more board meetings and product launches and all the machinery of business. But none of it would matter as much as this five people who'd been overlooked, finding each other in the dark and creating light. Sometimes the most powerful language isn't spoken at all. It's signed with hands that once held loss, now hold love. And that Aurelia thought as she sat in the darkness with her new family sleeping nearby was the truest definition of success she'd ever known. For everyone who's ever felt overlooked, you matter. Your language matters. Your presence matters. This story is dedicated to the 48 million deaf and hard of hearing Americans who navigate a world not built for them, and to every parent learning that presence is the greatest gift we can give our children.